It's so good to be with you. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Rebecca Gerbert, and I'm the Managing Director for Lay Leadership Development at Jewish Federations of North America. So glad that you decided to spend your morning with us. We are going, like I said just a minute ago, to have a very interactive session, so I'm glad that you have decided to be a part of this interaction. I would like to welcome if you're a JFNA staff person, will you just raise your hand? Okay, lots of JFNA staff in here. If you're a local federation professional, will you also raise your hand? Great. And then to all the lay leaders here in the Federation, we're so glad that you're here. I would like to introduce Dina, who is going to kick us off for our session.
Good morning. It's wonderful to see all of you, and I am so excited to learn together today. I am Dina Barranque-Rashes, Chair of Lay Leadership Development and Secretary of the Board of JFNA. Our department supports the Changemakers Network, National Women's Philanthropy, National Young Leadership Cabinet, and local board development. Whether this is your first GA or your 10th, we are so glad that you are here. Every time you step into a leadership role, please know that you have the full support of our team to help you and your federation enhance your local lay leadership. We are gathering at a time of immense responsibility and challenge, with growing needs both at home and in Israel. Many of us feel like the weight of the world is on our shoulders. Thank you for your leadership and unwavering commitment to the work in this critical period. While our work is far from over, I hope that you will find support in this room and from our department as you continue to lead. I am sure you are all hard at work engaging fellow community members who are already invested in the work of your federation and encouraging others who are less involved that you would like to recruit to federation and deeper involvement in your Jewish communities. The Lay Leadership Department is here to help. We offer various opportunities to grow the leadership capabilities of your community members, from trainings and local to national gatherings. We have events that demonstrate our investment in lay leaders' growth. We have programs for a wide range of participants, from college students to those who have lived their entire lives in your communities. Today, we will learn from Gali Cooks, CEO of Leading Edge, Rabbi Mike Urim, Chief Learning Officer at JFNA, and Rebecca Gerbert, Managing Director for Lay Leadership Learning and Development, as they explore how Jewish values strengthen all of us as lay leaders and leaders in the Federation system. But we also want to learn from you. What is working in your communities? What challenges are you facing? And how can we help each other build flourishing Jewish communities across North America? Thank you for being here this morning and for your leadership in your communities. We hope that even if some of today's content is familiar, you will see it in a new light. Please reach out if you are looking to grow your own involvement or facilitate leadership development programming in your community. The Lay Leadership Development team is here to ensure that we are all ready and able to meet the members of our communities where they are. Thank you again for joining us, and I look forward to learning with you today.
Good morning, everybody. Hello, hello. What an amazing turnout. This is amazing. Thank you, Dina, and to Shana, and to Rebecca as well, and to all of you for being here. What we're hoping we'll be able to do this morning is really ground us in some of the data that we know about board leadership, about Jewish nonprofits, how we're doing as it relates to pushing forward some of that work. So I am here in the capacity of, and I'll get into it a little bit, as CEO of Leading Edge. Raise your hand if you're familiar with Leading Edge. Okay. Oh my God. Wow. This is amazing. So we are very data driven. We are all here to really power and empower all of you folks on the lay, on the professional, on the leadership side to really maximize your own potential so that our community can thrive. And we need flourishing and thriving Jewish communities right now. So I'm going to share a little bit about some of what we're hearing as it relates to governance, as it relates to board leadership in the Jewish community. So I'm going to do more than numbers. Then I'm going to hand it off to Mike to be able to bring us into some of the narrative, some of the heart and the soul of some of what we're doing here in a really sacred partnership between lay and pro. So with that, it's working. That's great. A little bit about Leading Edge. For those of you who are not familiar, about 50% of you are not, we were formed about 10 years ago, really by a partnership of federations and foundations who said, let us invest in the people who are the ones who really power our Jewish communities and are the ones who are going to make our world a better place. And that is really the core of what we do. So we put out resources and different tools, and we're very data-driven because you can't manage what you can't measure. And are really here to support the leadership during one of the most trying times, certainly for the Jewish community in my lifetime. So one of the things, before we get into some of the data, I will say that I came to this work really because I was tapped by someone, and that was Shoshana Cardin. Who is familiar with Shoshana Cardin? Yeah. So somebody, I said this in a previous session, she sort of like belongs in like the Mount Rushmore of like 20th century lay leadership, like just an incredible lay leader and understood the assignment, like she understood that lay and pro, like that twin engine is going to be propelling our community forward. You can't have one without the other. And it's really up to us, and this is basically what the long quote says, is really up to us to be able to carry our community forward. And she said that in 1989. So how much more so at a time when we have so many things that we need to figure out and really are in some ways in the wilderness having to figure out how to really navigate this time. So I really invite us into that sort of like Seker Chavruta, which we're literally going to go into. And as we like to say, iron sharpens iron, so really thinking about both sides and the way in which we can navigate together. Now, a little bit about Leading Edge in terms of how we're trying to really support the people who hold our community and make our world a better place. It starts with leadership, so we support leadership. We're also, and I'll get into some of the data, do the work in terms of board leadership, so really thinking about that lay-pro partnership, how to make it healthy. And the third is around workplace culture. So on the employee side, how to create the conditions where employees can maximize their potential, which really comes down to some of the policies and practices and procedures on the culture side that really make a workplace a leading place to work. So I want to focus on the board side. So there are two sides to this, as we talked about. There's the professional, and really the CEO is the key partner to the board. And there, I want to share a little bit, just a couple nuggets of data that we heard from CEOs, not just Federation CEOs, by the way, but plenty of them as well, around their perceptions of their board. And then we very recently also gathered information from board members around their experience in boards. And the whole point of this is to understand what alignment is there. Like truly, how could 1 + 1 = 3? Where are folks potentially communicating at the right level? Where is there potentially brokenness? And also, what is the most important thing to actually focus on is if we're thinking about effective boards that lead to effective organizations and a great community. So last year, we gathered information from over 300 CEOs about their boards. From what we understand, that was the first time that on this scale, CEOs were asked questions about their board, which is very helpful because let me tell you, when we started Leading Edge and people understood that we were like the people, what we heard were all negative stories about boards. And that we knew was, I don't think, even half the conversation. So we were like, let us get some information. So in the spring, we actually released a report that some of you may have seen that really break down some of the key findings. Now, I apologize for the small print, but that means you have to go to our website to get the report. But here's like the 5 key takeaways. Number 1, boards add value a lot. And I want to say this is sort of like, Captain Obvious, a little bit, but it's actually not. Because if you sometimes hear some of the horror stories, you think, well, we literally ask CEOs, if your board was not around, would that be better? And they're like, oh my God, no. It's like, it really is like cutting off an appendage in many ways. So the fact that boards add value in really concrete ways, and the report gets into some of the ways in which boards really do support the CEO, propel the organization to deliver better and really make our community richer, that is noteworthy. It's worthy of actually naming, even though it feels so obvious. And we were heartened to see, honestly. Now, the second thing that we found is that we are not so good at actually like the fundamentals of board stuff. The governance, the way in which we hold the CEO accountable or don't. Plan for succession, we don't. 2% of our organizations have a succession plan. 2. The national average is 15, so it's not like it's so high. But this is, some of the basic hygiene stuff, which as we look at this, we think that's actually good news because it's fixable. So fundamentals, like we can absolutely clean that up. The third, board chairs. Raise your hand if you're a board chair. Okay, you all are the secret weapon, the not so secret weapon. You are pivotal to the partnership with the CEO and really to the effectiveness of the organization. And what we heard, and we'll see this on the board member side, is that we have to do better in preparing you for these roles because they're pivotal, especially during this time for our community. So board chairs, the super men, people of our community. Fourth, board culture. It matters. And what we need to do is spend a little bit more time actually building that board culture so that we can have conversations that maybe aren't just consensus driven, that are hard, so that we can actually have dialogue and potentially debate around what our communities need to do in order to flourish, in order to make some decisions around trade-offs. Board culture is actually a key driver of effectiveness of boards and organizational effectiveness. So this isn't like dessert. It's like a main course, a very important piece. And then the fifth is around representation and just some of the diversity that we see around the board table. Across the board, honestly, boards are not diverse. If we look at board source, et cetera, whether it's cognitively, generationally, racially, what have you. And one of the things the CEO said is like, it's really hard to actually recruit board members. And I'd love to have, different points of view, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not sure where to find these people. So that's one of the things, again, that's sort of like good news that we can fix potentially, but so that's what we heard from the CEOs. Basically this, the CEO oversight, this is like, we can do it, and specifically, CEO succession, board culture, let's invest in it. And one of the things that we found is actually, in order to really start building that trust in a real way, a board needs to spend 2.5 hours per year in person. And then there's an element of like, okay, I know you now. Like we can start talking about stuff. It's a Shabbat dinner. That's all I'm saying. So there is a way in which we can do this so that then we can really get into like the difficult work. And then the third has to do around board chairs and really supporting board chairs. Okay, then the board side of the table. So just this past, like right before the holidays, we piloted with a partnership with JFNA, as well as the JCC Association, a board experience survey. So this is the first time that we actually asked board members, what is your experience like on the board? What are we doing well? What could be better? And so this was out of 21 organizations, so 10 JFNA or 10 federations, 10 JCCs, and Leading Edge, because we have to eat our own cooking. That's one of our mottos. And so there were 490 board members who answered this. Now, this is not a representative sample, and we at Leading Edge are very serious about data. So whatever I'm going to share is just noticings. These aren't trends. These are 10 federations and 10 JCCs, but they're interesting, and we've basically deemed this like a successful pilot, and therefore going to do it next year as well. Overall, what's really good is that the board members sitting around these organizational board tables have a favorable experience. They actually cite 3 things. 1, board meetings are actually meaningful and productive. 2, board leadership, actually there's confidence in it. They respect that. And 3, the board effectively works as a team, especially in times of crisis. So this is, again, the good news in many ways and should not be, it doesn't happen on automatic pilot. Now, the areas that we have that are ripe for growth are somewhat entertaining, actually, in that there were 21 organizations and 21 boards who took this thing. Out of that, there were 19 unique committee structures. I mean, everyone's unique, right? I mean, it's a very interesting, like, those are breadcrumbs to say we can standardize a certain level of governance. Also, for those board members, how many of you sit on multiple boards or serve on multiple boards? Right. We can make that easier, meaning if you go to one board, there should be some sort of standardization across different boards, and not every time everything is called something different and we do personnel different, we do, right? All that. So that was the first thing. Again, structural, and we can do it. The second has to do with the generational differences. So of the 490, about 10% of them were under the age of 40, so in their 30s generally. They have a very different experience and a much lower favorability than those who are over the age of 60, and the majority of our board members. We see that also on the employee side. There really is a generational divide in many ways, or curiosity and then going into frustration and different levels of engagement. And as we think of like the next generation pipeline and board recruitment, that's one of the things that we certainly noticed and are thinking about. And I would say that cabinet is sort of a bright spot from that perspective in terms of, being able to really engage deeply. The third has to do with some of the divides in like what CEOs say, and then board members are actually not aligned in whatever way. So board members say, yes, we are very supportive in terms of fundraising. CEOs are like, they're absolutely not. I want more support. In terms of Jewish wisdom and how to integrate Jewish learning into boards, the CEO is like, yeah, we got it, no problem. Board members are like, we don't do it at all. So there is, again, perception is reality, and being able to understand everyone's understanding enables you then to understand what are the ways in which we're going to change our behavior to then get better results. So let me just end by saying that lay leaders, we forget a lot of the time, there's a lot of professional development and leadership development on the professional side, but we forget that there's a partnership in terms of board leadership. And I think that's why the GA and JFNA in general, and in particular, is a model that does need to be scaled and in some way adapted to our community, because too often people are reinventing wheels and committee structures and other things. And it doesn't need to be so. That's the easy stuff that we can eliminate that friction. So then we can deal with some of the hard stuff of, holding our community right now, thinking of how we're going to work our way through the wilderness. So thank you. I applaud JFNA for this forum, and I yield the floor to the right honorable gentleman from Philadelphia. I don't know.
Does this work? Everyone can hear me? Yeah? Okay. So, hi everyone, I'm Mike Urim. Golly, thank you for that. Part of what I do as the Chief Jewish Learning Officer, I'm going to steal Eric Fingerhut's line about this. He says that if the mission of federations is to build flourishing Jewish communities, that JFNA is trying to help local federations do that. And he likes to say that like Mimi Kravitz's department about impact and growth, they're helping figure out the why or the how we build flourishing Jewish communities. And Shayna's department that does lay leadership development is about how do you train the who is going to build flourishing Jewish communities. And Eric likes to say that my job is nurturing the why. And I actually think it's more important now than it's been in most of our lived memories, because the more complicated our world gets, the more taxing Jewish leadership is, the more we need to kind of return to that like piece inside of us to like nourish ourselves about why this matters. It can't just be the next crisis and the next gala and the next check that we're writing. So that's what I get to do. And what I want to do a couple quick framing things, then we're gonna all talk. This is gonna be super interactive part of this. We're gonna build on what Gali just shared with us. I want to ask from the outset, Gali shared something that said 90% of people on boards feel positively about the experience. I almost fell out of my chair. In all of the consulting work that I've done previously and in JFNA, maybe I'm only being called in when there's a fire, but I hear a different vibe. So I'm just interested to know, like, can we do a little like pulse survey just here? No, that's awkward. Did that number seem high? Because I don't know if you're with other board members or you're a pro. Let me recalibrate that question. Raise your hand if that number felt high to you from your own experience. Okay. So take like 10 seconds. This is for anybody who's introverted, you get 10 seconds. Jot down a couple of things. I would love just to hear from you, like, where does board culture seem to not always be working? You're not talking about your board, but just generally, right? This way it won't be anything specific. But take 10 seconds, jot down a couple ideas, and then would love just to hear from people. Let's populate the room with some of the places where board culture might fall short. Okay, go. Okay, good. So people who need a little bit more time, you can keep jotting. What came up? Anyone want to lead off? Yeah, please. Great. Okay. Not engaged, for folks, if you can't hear, the people don't feel engaged, they lack curiosity.
And risk adverse.
And risk averse, great. And my guess is that risk averse is both in terms of organizational leaps and change. It also might be around if we're, one of the things I hear a lot about is if you're headed into a difficult decision about something that's politically divisive, there's a lot of anxiety about we can't have any tension on the board and trying every magic trick to avoid that. So it could also be on that end. Good, what else? Yeah. Generational divide. So I think Gali's data was really hit hard on that also, just about how few people under 40 there are. Great. Oh, so this is such, thank you, Jeff, right? That's okay, I remember you from a couple years ago. This is such an important piece of culture that when you're on a board, are you representing your own political view, your own experience, your own kids, especially with a school board, your own kids' experience, or is it about the community? Is it about the organization? There's all these different hats in a boardroom, and a lot of times there's kind of it's like figure it out. What like no one is telling us as board leaders or as board members like what hat we're supposed to have on in that moment. Good, yeah. Lack of authority. Say a little bit more. Oh, okay. So there was a lot, I feel like, even in the term lack of authority, but sometimes we have issues where a committee leans one way and it gets overruled by the board or the executive committee. There's also, I hear a lot of this where we don't do anything, like everything happens in a small group and then we just rubber stamp it so there's no authority. We're not using my experience and talent and all this. Okay, good. I was a little bit nervous, Gali, when it was all sunshine and rainbows, that there was gonna be nothing to talk about, but okay, we got some stuff. We feel like we have some stuff? Okay. So I also, you set it up perfectly, Gali, because you said that everyone thinks we're doing Jewish learning as part of it, but it's not happening. So what I wanna do is to bring in some text, and I wanna frame what that means. It's not Hebrew school. And actually, I had a great teacher who used to say to me, don't be pious when you learn. So when we study Jewish texts, we're not saying, oh, what does Judaism say? And then we follow it. It means we wrestle with it, we rip it apart, we bring our own experience to it. And one of the most beautiful explorations of this is actually a non-Jewish educational guru by the name of Parker Palmer, based on the poetry of Emily Dickinson. And he basically says that in order to get to the real stuff, the stuff that really matters as a human being, you need a third thing. That if you just go right at it, he says the soul is shy and it'll hide. But all of a sudden we can be talking about what Hillel says here in this text, but what we're really talking about is that terrible thing that happened to you on the board and what you wished it was gonna be, and then we get there. So the idea of Jewish text is not we're taking our board hat off and moving into like our kippas on, but this becomes a tool and the power of this symbol to figure out all these ways that we want to build a board culture. Good? That's what we're going to try to do. So it doesn't matter how much you know. The idea is see what the words trigger for you and bring your own experience to it. And I want to make sure I just got everything. Good, that's it. So what we're going to do is take 10 minutes in Chavruta, in paired study. Ideally, you'll pick one other person. If you want to do a 3-person group, that's fine too. In Jewish tradition, the Hebrew word to read is likro, which actually means to call out. There's no concept of silent reading in Judaism. So the way that we do this is you have to read part of it out loud, you have to hear it, your partner has to hear it. Don't think and jot down notes privately. This is meant to be a chance to, like, Gali suggested a Shabbat dinner to build that community. This is a 10-minute version of how you reach across and build that community. There are some guiding questions. You don't have to do them all. But the idea is Rabbi Hillel here, it's Pirkei Avot, which is really from the Mishnah, second, at the end of the 200 CE. Rabbi Hillel may have had a little bit of ADD. Every time there's a series of things, so-and-so says, every time Hillel has a statement, it's like 5 statements. He had a hard time kind of summarizing. So there are really 5 statements that Hillel is making about nothing related to a board, but it actually has great wisdom for how we build board culture. Good? Okay, 10 minutes, lots of noise, even some arguing, it's all good. And then we'll come back and play with it. Let's come back together. Shh. Will you guys scooch for a sec? Okay, wow, you guys are a good group. That was impressive. Okay, so anybody want to, like, the next 10 minutes or so, 12 minutes, we're just gonna, like, play with this. We're gonna make, I said this earlier this morning, but, like, the moment a text becomes living is when we take something static on the page and start bringing our own experience to it. So that's what we're gonna do for the next 15 minutes. Like, we're gonna teach each other and be in a group chavrut and not just 2 people. So anyone wanna start? Like, what came up? And if you talk quietly, I'll repeat it through the mic. Yeah, please. Huh. And so, let me just summarize in case people can't hear. This time, the thing that hit was the 3rd piece, which is don't judge another until you've reached their place.
Life cycle events, sadness in our world, those types of things. But there are times we really can't be empathetic.
Yeah.
Right? There are times that we will never, I don't know what it's like, and this was the example we were discussing, at 2 a.m. to dive into a bomb shelter, worried about my house being blown up or being killed, right? I don't know what that's like. I can't be empathetic. I can sure as heck try to be sympathetic, but that's not the same thing. I'm never going to, at least in this moment, I'm never going to be in that spot. And so whether it's health challenges or financial challenges or other things, sometimes we can be empathetic, or family challenges, and sometimes we can't.
Ooh, okay. Thank you so much. There's 2 things I want to underscore that you said, but I want to just draw them out. In general, I actually think the empathy thing is if we're trying to figure out how to rebuild our culture in North America of how to talk to each other between generations, between different political divides around Israel stuff, to build bridges to combat anti-Semitism, I actually think that empathy is one of the ways that we break down, like, the binaries that we're constantly forced into, that you're either pro or anti, Trump or Harris. We're like, I'm going to borrow from Sadie Smith. She says, we are all internally plural. None of us is one thing, and yet the way that we talk politically makes us feel that way. So in general, this empathy thing that you emphasized, there's a lot there that I think we should be thinking about in this moment. But specifically in terms of leadership and board, part of what I think how that applies when you draw out the empathy piece is people on boards also put each other in boxes, right? Oh, you're the old timers, we're the new generation. I think you voted for that person, therefore everything you say is suspect, because, right? And before you even have a chance to actually engage in some kind of board learning or high-level thought partnership, there is, oh, you're one of those. And then everything you say comes out of that lens. So empathy allows, like, to de-escalate some of those things that seem to separate us so that boards can actually do their real work. But then you said something else, which I don't know if you intended this, but many times I go and talk to boards and, like, we have such a diverse board. We even have people in their 40s. We got two young people, right? But when you actually start, like I do this shtick sometimes, we'll say like, how many of you belong to a synagogue? And how many of you been to Israel? And how many of you sent kids to Jewish summer? It's everybody. And so there is diversity, but if you just go up from like 5,000 feet to 10,000 feet, we're all the exact same. And so if you're trying to figure out really good policy for people who are food insecure, or for really for college students, I don't know if you want to jump in at some point and say your piece, but there is a limit to how much you can empathize with people who have radically different experiences than you. And if you want to do the highest level of board work, you actually need those voices to be part of that conversation. And that sometimes gets missed. Sometimes I see this also, I don't want to speak too personally, but in the way that sometimes financial aid committees are structured, where it's like the biggest givers are the ones trying to figure out financial aid. And I remember there was a rabbi who worked for me, and it just got read the wrong way during COVID. And when I talked to the committee, they said, oh, we never thought that might be what's going on. And so like that's another example where like real kind of breaking out of those silos can help. Do you want to say your piece though? Okay, yeah.
Focused on like the students in it right now in university, and as a student sometimes I don't feel like that well represented, because I understand there's obviously like younger members of the board, but it would be so nice to see like someone from my school or from schools that are there like to say something and to like make their voice heard. And I'm not even just saying university, because I was the only Jew in my high school, so I faced so much bullying. And even at like a high school, like grade 12, grade 11 level, I know it's different in the States because there's like senior high versus like middle school, but even maybe at that level, because there is still like issues that haven't been brought up. And I feel like sometimes it's overlooked, the fact that kids like younger than like in their 20s in university, they don't really have like a way to advocate for themselves on these boards. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Right. So thank you. I think it was such a nice connection, because it's that same idea of like, whether you're talking about people who are at risk financially, or college students, or just the people who are under-engaged, right? All of us who are super Jews are talking about how to get them connected. And like one of the ways that we change that dynamic is like actually like not trusting in our own wisdom immediately, and making sure that we're building those bridges. Yeah, please.
I don't want to just say how fabulous my CEO is, but for those of us who run teen philanthropy programs or have teens who are part of our federation and part of our programming, we do have 2 teens that sit as full voting members on our federation board of directors. And we have teens that sit and help with grants and allocations. If you trust in them and you're having them engaged in your programming, giving them a voice is such a wonderful message, and it does truly add to the diversity of opinions and conversation, and it's an amazing, empowering experience. Yeah. So the qualifications for being a teen to sit on our program, you need to have participated on our youth philanthropy board for at least a year, and then you need someone fabulous to recommend you after you apply. And I vet the kids and present a slate
What
to
community
the board.
are you from?
Phoenix, Arizona.
Great. Okay, so by the way, there's like I think a hidden gem in what she just explained also, which is the idea that they like to be on a board as an adult. Usually you have to have done something already, and then to make it into a leadership role, there's like some kind of leadership pathing. So it's actually a beautiful thing that the students kind of have to prove something also. There sometimes can be a tokenization where you pick those young people and then they sit there and smile, but it's nice the way that you package it, they have to earn that. So I think this is actually a huge piece. If we just look at the text for one sec, that this kind of goes across a few of these ideas. One is the idea of don't trust, it's very grandiose language, but don't trust in yourself until the day of your death. So like, so I think some of the ways this plays out is the idea is like, we don't want to be trapped in groupthink, right? If everyone on the board already knows each other, it means there's probably not kind of social network diversity. If everyone on the board looks the same way or has the same abilities, it's probably not diverse in that way. So that's like one angle about what it means to not trust in ourselves, that we can't just seek the same old people for the same old wisdom. But people have did it come up about how to apply that idea of don't trust in yourself and what that means for board culture? Yeah.
This is working?
Yeah.
Okay. So I interpret it as, or we discussed it as, it's not don't trust what you're thinking, but you're not the only one in the room. And if you are making all the decisions, you're not getting diverse viewpoints, and it doesn't further other people's development as well.
Right. And I think there is sometimes a dynamic like that where people, either because they're looking for purpose, people kind of subconsciously decide like, okay, I'm going to be this person on the board. I'm going to bring my business experience. I'm going to bring my progressive political views. And there's some sense of like, it's not just about, you're not just coming to bulldoze with your idea, but there's actually like an alchemy that we're looking for. It's about how all these different perspectives come together, and that's different than getting what you want, right? Or representing one view. Good. Did anyone else pick on that one? Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shayna. To me, it just strikes me as like, it's just not about you, right? Like it's about the organization. It is about the mission. It is not about each of us as individuals. We are trying to work in some direction together. And it can't be about us as individuals, because then as the individual leaves, everything shifts and changes. And in order to have that consistency, it has to be about the thing that we are working on together and not about us.
I love what Shana just said. Does anyone have a model for that? Like this, I think I'm saying like the punchline before we're done, but one of the things I really do want to say, and I've been surprised at this in all of the kind of conversations that I've had, is that people don't always feel like part of the job of leadership, it's not obvious always, that part of the job of leadership is to set the expectations and the values. And sometimes like really good leaders repeat, Eric is a good example of this, but you have to repeat yourself over and over again to make those values real. Like you could say flourishing Jewish communities and the firehouse, right? Everyone knows the firehouse. Sorry, Eric, I love you. But there's something about that. So like, this idea that there may be a natural inclination for board members to assume that their job is to show up and speak for themselves. And Shane is saying it's not about you. So has anyone seen a really effective model of like naming a different set of ground rules and values for that? Yeah.
I'm from Vancouver, and we went through that exact transition about 18 years ago, where we took a very non-functioning school board and actually put a strategic vision in with, you literally take off your parent hat, you leave it outside the room, you come in, and if you can't make a decision for the school because it affects your child, you have to leave during that vote and not participate.
Well, by the way, it's an amazing. It's actually I've been on 2 school boards. You all have more experience than I do, but that's one place where I've done some of this, and like that ability to say, especially if you're headed into something where you know people have strong feelings, like you say it at orientation, you say it quarterly, and then before you head into that moment, you say, this is this moment where actually literally, and maybe I don't do well with this. I've seen consultants do it really well, where you actually like do some almost like meditative, get people grounded, so that they can get all of their personal parent stuff or personal political stuff to the side so they can think about the org. Any other models where you've seen that really work? Because if not, I want to share one other. Yeah.
I'm Rob,
Amazing. So this is actually, I think this goes really well with the fifth point of Rabbi Hillel, which is, that I don't think it's necessarily when we're talking about board. I mean, I loved the idea of Torah study at a board, but like, why is this here for a board conversation about like, don't put off the learning, maybe there'll never be time for it? Because this is also like one of these great pieces. Part of what it means to be a board member is to learn to see it beyond your own experience in the community or in the organization. What I also love about the way that you frame that, I'm borrowing here from BoardSource and from someone named Cheryl Katzman, who did a brilliant job with this. But one of the ways you build productive culture is by telling the board what role they're playing at that moment. So what Cheryl Katzman actually recommends, she said there's fiduciary oversight and decision making is a role. That part of being a board member is thought partnership with the professional staff. And part of it is learning so that you can be a good ambassador for the organization. And the worst thing that happens is you have a young staff member presenting something that is happening or already happened, and the board thinks it's thought partnership or decision-making time, when really you're just supposed to be learning so you can be a good ambassador. And if there's something really intense about an Israel thing or about a COVID policy, the ability to say, we are in thought partnership mode. No, we are not deciding tonight. The goal is to learn. We want to hear where people are coming from. Those things, by setting those norms and building that culture intentionally, you can avoid so many problems before they break out. Good. We've got like 1 or 2 more minutes. Anything else jump out that you would love to say? Yeah.
I see this sentence as totally different than everything you say.
Yeah.
And maybe because I sit on some sophisticated boards, although I do sit on a synagogue board, which clearly is like a school board. I see it differently. I think you should trust in yourself. We want our board members to speak about their experience, to feel clearly that they can speak. We also want them in the end to support whatever the decision of the board is. But I want people who are not afraid, which is the equivalent of trusting in yourself, not afraid to speak out, whether they're against it, whether they have experience they think is relevant, et cetera.
Yeah.
So I think that makes a better board. And I give a speech at the synagogue board, which I'm on fiduciary duty almost every single time, that you're not here about what you personally want, you're here for what is in the best interest of the synagogue. But I think that a lot of the Federation boards are pretty sophisticated, and I think we should encourage them to trust in themselves.
Love that. Okay, good. And that actually, there was one loose end that we didn't tie in, so it's a nice connection to that. The one of the models I've seen work really well for how to encourage that, because there's like 2 things you're trying to hold, right? It's like show up as yourself and believe, and you can express your own experience and your own perspective on it. And when we make a decision, we're still one board. And so one of the things I've seen work really well in terms of building culture is you actually say to people, no, we really want you on this board as a far extreme person on this side or far extreme person on this side, or someone with a really different set of experiences. But there's a tweak to it, which is instead of pounding on the table and saying, if we do this, I'm pulling my gift and resigning, you pound on the table and say, I know people in this community, and the way we're doing this, it's going to blow up in our face. Let me share my constituency's experience so we can be smarter. And so you're bringing that trust in yourself and that partisanship, but in a way that's not just about you, but it's about pushing the organization forward. And so those little things about stating the values, and then you obviously have to live up to them, it's one of the ways that leaders can prevent, terrible things from exploding before it even happens. Yeah, you're gonna hit the last comment, and then I'll wrap us up.
The whole trusting in yourself part, also, I'm here with the Changemakers, so I'm a young person, but I do serve on a board of a non-Jewish company called Colossal Biosciences. They're bringing back the woolly mammoth. And so the trusting in your...
Just in passing, by the way. It's at a place called Jurassic Park. It'll be good. Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, with CRISPR and other genetic technologies. But the trusting in yourself part, yes, you can trust that you have abilities and you have experiences, but the whole point is that you're not supposed to trust, oh, I know best, and that there's Hashem above yourself, instead of just saying, I know this, I know that, and the bulldozing part. And Right. This is pure K vote. It's not, just someone from a board telling you what to do.
But I think I love that you said that. One of the ways that we also manage is like having something outside of our own experience to ground us, like the power of these symbols and this wisdom. Okay, I want to wrap up. Thank you all very much. I hope this gave a sense of a way to use, it's not like there's like board stuff and then like the hard science that Gali did, and then we go and do like a little tech study, be a good person, and like here's a fortune cookie, and then you move on. But there's ways that like these values and conversations with them provide a way of talking about what we want our experience to be. And I do think you're right. It's different than just reading an article from BoardSource. This is our historical family's conversation about how to be in community with each other. It's ours. It's a treasure that we chose or inherited. And it's something that we bring it in. It really animates and grounds us in the why we're doing this. So thank you. I'm going to turn it over. Rebecca Gerbert's going to take us into the final piece.
Hello. The other thing that I also want to say is that while we spent the last hour talking about board work, I just want to expand our level of thinking that this isn't just when you have your board hat on. This is when you're in conversation. You can use this text in your daily life, not just when you're sitting around the board table, but when you're in regular conversation. So with that, Mike, Gali, and I are going to open for questions, whether it's related to the text, something that Gali was sharing earlier, or anything that's happening in your community that we can kind of crowdsource in the room. Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to share my favorite quote that I think relates to this work from Brene Brown, which is, "I'm here to get it right, not be right," which is really about that trust thing, right? Like, yes, trust yourself, but trust in the group. She's full of them. I mean, she's really one of our modern sages. That's all I wanted to share.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Daniel Hers, Northern New Jersey. That was amazing. This has been an incredible session, so thank you. I wanted to share because I thought it's useful. So I sit on the board of a college of a large university, which you can imagine has very divisive opinions and strong opinions. And with that said, there is both a level of trust in oneself and compassion and love that's brought. But what I wanted to really share was the way we're able to have very, very difficult, really divisive conversations is because we end up spending 5 days a year together off-site. And so you're going to dinner together, you're learning together, and you're having this immersive time together. And it creates this level of trust that I think is extremely useful and we can bring back to our boards and having that time. So thank you.
Does anyone have a question or something that they'd like to talk through?
Hi, I'm Margot Fox. I'm the Jewish Federation of Greater Indianapolis. Go Hoosiers. 10-0, 10-0. Okay. I want to shout out, we've been working parallel for many. No, not at all. You're mine. For a long time. I find that specific to text, I work a lot with our emerging leaders and do leadership development work right now, and want to find more and more ways to bring text into the work that we do with folks who are freaked out by it, because we just don't do it very much. And so I know you've done a lot of work. I would love to be involved and figure out ways that we can do this more so that we can take all of the knowledge, but continue to ground it Jewishly, because that's what makes us different. And thank you, by the way.
But there is like we offer this thing called Devar Torah Boot Camp. It's not just about how to give a Devar Torah, but it's trying to help people get a little bit more confident, to have some tools to bring Jewish language into their leadership in writing and board meetings and a Devar Torah. But it's really about like lenses and about finding enough confidence to trust your own intuition, because we all have something deep to say. We just often don't think we should because we don't know enough, and we're going to break all that Jewish guilt. Yeah, it's taught online, and there's one coming up.
Yes, we're actually running, Mike and I partnered together a lot, and we're running an Israel intensive course in a few weeks, and then also a Devar Torah boot camp and a leadership camp, I guess, in the springtime. So we'll make sure that our emails are up on the screen so that y'all can register for those things. Yeah, and if there's anything else that you're interested in learning about, we're here to
Yes.
Okay, so one challenge we're having, and I'm just going to put it on the table, is that we are doing so much exciting work and so many people don't know about it. And this team is remarkable. So one thing that you could all do, either now when you see folks' email addresses, or if you want to reach out to any of us, over the course of the day, please let us know which communication channels work best for you. Let us know if you're a lay leader or a professional and how you want to hear from us, because we really want to avail you of all these amazing opportunities, but we're just afraid that information is not getting to you. So thank you so much.
So on that note, as a professional from a small community, it's who's this for? So this conference at the GA, a lot of the topics are so general to allow a wide tent, but then when we get down to it, it's like, who do I give this to? Who needs to hear this? Whose message is it? Who's our target market?
Oh, hi, I'm Elise, presently from South Palm, but I was in Baltimore for a long time and did a lot of work with governance. And going back to the beginning of our conversation earlier, I think it warrants good conversation around the lay and pro relationship. And I think that really guides how the board member feels about what they're doing and how empowered they are, how much the professional takes over. And I think that clear and really specific, roles is very important. And, we've all had many different roles, and sometimes the person you're working with really makes a difference in your impression of how effective you've been, how excited you are about what you're doing. And I think that's something worth really evaluating.
I think that's a great point. Hi, I'm Ben Schindler. Hi. I work with National Young Leadership Cabinet, and my voice sounds weird. Thanks. It's good to see so many people. One of the things that we have adopted to that point and to the conversation that Stephen and I were having, one of the things that we've adopted over the last couple of years with our leadership team, our lay leaders within Cabinet, is we do a retreat. It's a little bit longer than a Shabbat dinner, but it's a great way, and we're national, so we're bringing people together, but you can do that in your local communities, obviously. And one of the things we do at that retreat is we develop a BREAT, or a contract, among our lay team and our professional team. And then we take some time with it, we brainstorm it, and then we come back together a little bit later after we've refined it, and everybody signs on to it. And it's been a really effective way to define some roles, the what we do and who's responsible, but it's also a really effective way to define how we show up, what our expectations are around when we walk into the room, how we interact with each other. And it's not just a thing that we put on the lay leaders, here's how you show up as a lay leader. It's all of us. It's the professionals and it's the lay leaders together saying, hey, this is how we want to do this work together in order to move forward. And what that sets us up for is when we get to the point of a difficult conversation or making a choice around a program where people don't necessarily always align, we at least have the foundational building blocks to say, here's how we're going to enter this conversation. And then to a point that was made earlier, when we finish that conversation, we can all be aligned with whatever that decision is, even if we weren't the greatest advocate for it. So I just wanted to share that. It's actually an exercise and a tool that we can share. So if you're interested, please connect with me or with Shayna. It's a one-pager. So, and we're happy to share that.
Ben, everybody. Great. Anybody have any last thing that they would like to share before we send you into the last plenary of the day? Great. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being part of the system.